What? Oh, all
How
right.
is everybody doing today?
What's up, Eric? How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Hey, Josh, I got to tell you, I watched the show yesterday when you had my replacement on. That was excellent. I'm glad that I'm back on the show today. I was feeling a little bit like Pete Best. Do you know who Pete Best is?
I don't.
Pete Best is who the Beatles fired so that they could hire Ringo Starr.
That's right.
And so, Eric, I was not able to be on the show yesterday, so Josh had a fill-in host. Also, I don't know who played shortstop before Cal Ripken Jr. I'm not enough of a baseball fan to get that to actually know the reference, but I can make the reference that I'm sure somebody lost their job so that Cal Ripken could go on his streak that he did down there in with the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah, for sure.
But I am glad to be back. Hey, so guys, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Josh and I do this show, about a 30-minute show every day, to talk about what's live, what's happening, what's going on in a meaningful way for real estate investors and realtors in central Pennsylvania. We have a guest on every Thursday who we think is a rock star, and today's rock star is a guy by the name of Eric Brewer. We try to hit it hard with content. We start out with some news and stuff like that. We're going to go light on news today and really talk about Eric. I've known Eric for a long time. Eric, his numbers are mythic. He wholesales about 15 properties a month and buys, fixes, and sells in turnkey space about 15 properties a month. Sometimes those numbers all dwindle down to 10 or go up to 20. But he is a beast in marketing and systemization, and has got an amazing team. He'll be the first one to tell you that if it was up to him, he couldn't do it. I know a lot of the players on his team, and they are absolutely phenomenal. So there's really, it'd be hard for us to get a better guest talking about what's actually happening right now in June of 2020 in real estate in central Pennsylvania, because he does more deals in a month than most people do in 2 years. So, Eric, is that a sufficient introduction for you, my friend?
Yeah, I think you've set the bar pretty high for me, but the numbers at a minimum that you're using are pretty spot on. So yeah.
And here's the other thing that I love about you, Eric. You and I have done business together. We've managed some of your properties, and then until you launched your own property management company, which is awesome, by the way. We've kind of worked in parallel tracks. You never brag about your numbers. You brag about your team. You brag about the company you're doing. You kind of, like, people know you do high volume, but it's only because I've been inside your operation and seen your whiteboards and stuff like that I know you do the crazy volume you do. And so hats off to you, number one, the real estate investing industry is populated by a lot of male dominated egos. And I'm sure that's something you keep in check. But I want you to know that you do a great job putting a humble face on what it is that you do.
Thank you.
That's inspiring, man. I wish there was more people out there doing it that way.
Thank you.
Were you always that way? Is that something intentional? Let's start the show there, man.
No, not at all. Definitely was not always that way. It's been an intentional area of focus for me because of rebuilding and hitting multiple ceilings over the, I guess, almost 15 years now that I've been in business. And, I made a decision that I was going to seek out a better way. And there's probably 5 key elements that we've implemented, both from a logistical perspective and just a strategical perspective, that's given us the ability to no longer spend a lot of time at those ceilings. We consistently find ourselves being able to push through those and then move on to the next level and the next phase, and really scale at a responsible and yet quick pace. But no, I was definitely not that way. I was more of we're actually in the middle of a 2-day quarterly review where I bring in an outside consulting company that helps us with a lot of our scaling and so forth. They're here now. We're on a lunch break. And this is completely focused on leadership, which ultimately is not about you. It's about your people. So, and it's something we spend a tremendous amount of time working on, talking about, training, and it was a shock to me to transition my thinking away from what I knew to be, basically just a manager. Previously, I was a manager of process and have slowly become a better leader of people. So that for me has been a big transition in the last probably less than 3 years for me. I can say that's been the one singular thing I think that has led to our continued growth.
Can you contrast with some concrete examples what your business looked like 4 years ago as opposed to now, and what your approach to leadership is, and what's the difference?
Yeah, so 4 years ago we did it's still a high volume, right? So if we do 400 transactions this year, we were doing 250, say 4 years ago. So it was still a lot.
Yeah.
All of those 250 at some point or at most points had to pass through me. I would hire people to complement my strengths, not my weaknesses. So a lot of, milder versions of me running around. So we had a lot of really good salespeople that were terrible at organization and planning. And at that point, 4 years ago, it was more of a dictator than it was a leader. So we had a bunch of people telling each other what to do. Right. So it was a relatively, toxic would be a strong word, but if you compared it to our culture now, it would have been toxic. Yeah. Back then it's all, again, I hired a bunch of other, milder dictators. So none of us felt it was toxic because that's how we worked. So the problem is that, all those 250 transactions ran through me. When we would reach ceilings, because I just got exhausted or I got tired or I wasn't available. As I started to embrace more of a leadership mentality, I was able to, I'll say delegate. I think sometimes delegating gets a bad rap. So I like to use the word empowering. I would empower people to make decisions. I took all of this tribal knowledge that I had up in my head and started putting it into documented processes so that people didn't have to come to me. They could go to the process to get the answer. Cool. And then what happens is deals happened quicker. They happened with less pain. Customers were happier because there wasn't this. I always use the car analogy because I came from the car business, and I think it's one of the things that a lot of people can relate to is the back and forth, right? Like if you ever talk to anybody about a car dealership, it's like, why didn't I just get the best deal the first time? Right. The problem is because no one ever empowers salespeople to make pricing decisions. They always have to seek approval from management. So they're getting up and going back and forth 5 or 6 times. It's just not enjoyable, right? It's not an enjoyable part of the process. If you think about some of the places that have led that change in the car business, like the CarMaxes of the world and Saturn, when they were still in business, they had a no haggle price. That was the price. They put out their best price. So they empowered their salespeople by standardizing their pricing. And if you look, I don't know about, anything outside of just our area, but CarMax sells more cars than anybody else. People never complain about their process. Because it's streamlined. So that is probably the biggest glaring, obvious difference between 4 years ago and now is I actually don't really make many decisions at all. We have standards. Our people are trained on those standards in our processes. And we were just talking about this now is we have, instead of a bunch of doers, we have an entire team of problem solvers. Yeah.
That's great.
Problems come up in business throughout the course of the day, whether it's a problem with a customer or a problem with a contractor or a problem with a utility company. We have a bunch of problem solvers. And when you're able to solve problems for customers or coworkers, it's a fun place to work and a really appealing place to do business. So that, I hope that answers your question. It's me getting out of everybody else's way is probably the biggest difference. So yeah, I mean, things happen in spite of me now, not because of me, right?
So let's talk in particulars. I mean, it's kind of hard to get a grasp on this if you're not in business yourself, if you haven't been a manager or run your own company.
Yeah.
So I want to dial it down, or not dial it down, more dial it into some specific examples of some things that you're doing. So you said in the past you were, everything ran through you. You end up being the guy who says, "Hey, look, this is what we can pay for this property," and
Yes.
somebody else is negotiating it or whatever. What have you implemented now to be able to communicate to your team, like, this is why we need to pay this for the property. This is how I came up with my number, and here's how you can look at a property in the future to be able to do that.
We just documented standards.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's it. So what 90% of the time when people would call me for approval, it wasn't a surprise.
Yeah.
Right. You're just verifying the standard. The difference was I hadn't established the standard and made it a standard. It was always my opinion. Well, my opinion was always my standards. I just never took the time or energy or cared enough to put those standards into a documented format that people could refer to. They had to refer to me. They didn't have a process or a standard to refer to. So when you take the time to physically sit down and create standards and create process, that becomes the communication tool rather than having to constantly leverage people. A lot of people do that through tech. A lot of, there's 1,000 different ways to do it. In our business, it was created standards. So to a point as an acquisitions person and you needed to know what to pay, there was a standard, right? If it's a property that we're going to renovate, there's a standard that we need to achieve from a profit perspective. If it's a wholesale opportunity, those standards are less. I'm willing to make less of a profit on a wholesale deal than I am a property that I have to renovate, owned, fund, and effectively manage for 6 months, right? Like
because the risk is higher, the effort is higher, the capital is more intensive, the payroll capital is more intensive.
Everything.
You've got more,
So those we created standards. So I think that answers your question. So
you did.
The standards gave people the guidance that they needed to be able to make decisions on their own.
So that's excellent, and I guess that's another thing that Josh, you and I need to do, and I've been doing this a little bit. But Eric, if you're selling 15 wholesales a month or anywhere close to that number, you're a good person for people to know, or somebody on your team is a good person for somebody to know who is looking at getting started in real estate so that they can buy wholesales from you for themselves to flip. And also, hey, Eric, I got a property under contract. It's in your footprint. Are you interested in buying this from me? I'm sure that you buy wholesales from other people, and maybe you say no the first 2 or 3 times, but people can learn what your standards are, and then they can almost be an independent contractor, acquisitions guy for you.
Yes, we buy 30 to 40 properties a year from other investors.
Okay.
So,
well, and so let's target in on that, on the marketing. We've been talking about marketing for the last 2 weeks, just everything from fundamentals to tactical application and lead sources, things like that. Have you found that things have changed? I mean, direct mail, I used to do a ton of direct mail. I found that diminishing returns, and I find myself, every piece of junk mail just goes in the trash can. I don't even open it, So have you seen some changes in the industry as far as marketing? I mean, I'm sure the answer is yes, but more practically, what changes have you seen as far as trends on what's working, what's not? I'm not asking for all your secrets, but I'll take them if you'll give them.
Yeah. So what's changed? I'm trying to think of the best way to answer that. It's always changing. So what's, 3 months ago what was working changed, and then that may be back. So you're constantly, there's a few consistencies, right? Like regardless of when you talk about a diminishing return on direct mail,
Yeah.
For us, it's a staple. So, it hasn't reduced its effectiveness to a point to where it no longer makes sense. We monitor a couple different things: our cost per lead, our cost per contract, things of that sort. And as long as it's within those parameters, we make the decision to continue to do it. If there's some small tweaks that we can make to increase that ROI, we'll do that. But just because something was a 10x ROI 6 months ago and now it's a 7 doesn't mean it stinks. It just means it's not as great as it was 6 months ago. And I think it's one of the things that people too often do with marketing is they experience. So the best thing for, every time we mail a new list, we get this great response. And then we consequently measure every, success of the following campaigns on the first one. Well, it's not fair. Like, what's the standard, right? What is the expectation, and what's our minimum acceptable result?
So, and do you get those standards from industry standards? Do you set those standards yourself?
Both. Because I say sometimes like our market, let's say for cold calling, may outperform other markets. So if we only looked from our standards, and it may drop below, what we've historically seen. And a lot of times there can be, outside impact influencers of that. Maybe more people are cold calling. I don't think direct mail is less effective. I think just more people are doing it. So the same amount of people are responding to direct mail. They just have 6 or 9 different options. So when they pick up that postcard, they're not selecting yours anymore. So, but I think the same amount of people are making the decision to sell their house because of direct mail.
But that is never, Eric, that is revolutionary thought to me. That's so simple, and I'm mad at myself for not recognizing that.
So I'll blow your mind even more. Ready?
Yeah.
So what you have to do then is, because I've seen that so many, what happens is they get paralysis by analysis, right? So unless your postcard just happens to hit the day that something changes in their life and they're going to make that decision, which is not realistic, right?
Likely.
They take that postcard, they sit it somewhere with their important papers, right? And then they refer back to it. But what happens is, over the course of that year that they've been pondering that decision, they've accumulated 10 postcards. So then they're siphoning through them, trying to figure out, like, who do I call? I'm not going to call 10, at least I don't want to. So what we've done then is we've supported that with other marketing strategies. So for us, what we do is we look at 5 potential touch points for every customer, because, so people go, when you buy a list, what do most people call it? They call it a mailing list.
Mailing list, right.
But that's a fundamental, it's a list. Don't choose just to mail it. It's a list of people. You can do much more with it than just mail it. So we mail it, we text it, we call it, we Facebook it, and we do some other branding things. Like I have 14 billboards up right now. I wouldn't just do billboards as lead gen. I think they're completely ineffective. We do television.
I was going to ask about this. So by the way, since the last time we spoke, and we had you on here with a bunch of other people, from that point about 2 months ago until now, I can't turn on the TV without seeing Mike Lindell with his My Pillow and Eric Brewer.
Yeah, I hope you don't look at me the way you do the pillow guy. I'm so sick of it. My shirts are way better than his too. He's just but he's got like some polyester blend, right? Shirt on. That's just anyway. So
I was just curious. I wanted to ask you whether you were getting direct responses from your TV ads, or whether that was to grease the skids and make your other marketing more effective.
So both, but it's the TV for us has. Have you guys ever read the book The Tipping Point?
Yep.
Yeah.
TV was our tipping point. So we were doing postcards, we were doing, text, call, we've done door knocking, we've done all of that stuff. And they didn't seem to necessarily work together, right? Like when we texted that person, it was hard for them to see the correlation between the postcard and the text, or the cold call and the postcard, or any combination of those. When we did the television, people now call, and we track it based on phone numbers, but they'll call the postcard number and say that they called because of television, because we ask it as part of it, right? So they have the postcard, but the way that they decided to choose us rather than, maybe 2 or 3 other people that they got postcards from is because of television.
That is deep analytics. I love that. One of my favorite marketing sayings is, "In God we trust, all others bring quantifiable data."
Yeah.
And that is quantifiable data when you have when you ask, you don't just trust the number they called, you also ask them. Did you so was the tipping point for your tipping point being in Collective Genius and talking to Chandler out of DC? Because I know that he does, I forget if it's $1 million a month or $1 million a year he spends in TV ads.
I
Because
think it's a year.
I think that's what it took for him to break through in the DC market.
Yeah,
he's an awesome guy, by the way. He's
in a much different market. That DC kind of Virginia suburbs market is extremely competitive and saturated with every type of investor, whether they're developers, fix and flip, buy and hold, whatever. He's been doing TV for a long time. And so no, it actually wasn't. I did TV years ago and spent a lot of money, didn't see the results.
Because you were in the car business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for us, what gave me the confidence to move into television was a strategic partner with someone that knows what they're doing.
Right.
And then one of the things that I preach about television to internally to our people is, anybody that's doing any type of mail campaigns and text campaigns and all this stuff, it gets rather complex. There's people that are out there stacking lists, and people that show up on 4 lists get mailed more often than a guy that's on 2. And you got 17 different niche lists and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then the biggest thing is timing.
Yeah.
Right? Because what most of these lists are trying to accomplish is some type of prediction, like based on these circumstances surrounding the property or this person's personal situation, and the access to that information that we have tells us that they might be likely to sell and sell for a discount, right? But sometimes from when that person, shows those signs of maybe being a seller to when they physically take action could be days, months, a year, right? I've had people call off of a postcard that they got a year ago. Yeah. The thing about television is you don't have to do all that crap. You don't have to back. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. It just works. It works at 3 a.m. It works at lunch. Like you've said, you've seen, some television ads, and you've probably seen them maybe into 6 o'clock news prior to the governor's briefing. When we were going through COVID, we were, I think the governor's briefing was at 2 p.m. We had a television ad that ran at 1:59 p.m. every day. So it just runs, right? Like it's just constantly out there working. And the thing about predictive data is something has to happen. You then have to collect it. Then you have to source it and then mail it. So it's right. Right. So if someone has pre-foreclosure, by the time you get the information, right, or the company that you get it from gets the information, you buy it, stack it, mail it. It's 2 weeks later. If someone did their job today or made the decision they're not going to make their mortgage payment, or their tenant pissed them off and they've decided they no longer want to be a landlord, and they see a television ad today, it's the best predictive.
I was wondering where we were going with that.
It's just always there.
Now that makes a whole lot more sense. All right, so I have a question for you, Eric. So you have 360 Property Management. That brand is pretty easy to understand. You have Clear to Close Renovations. That brand is pretty easy to understand. Help me understand, and the 300 to 400 people who are going to be watching this, help me understand, if you don't mind, the differentiation in your brands between CR Property Group and Integrity Home Buyers. Integrity Home Buyers is a newer brand that you've come out with. I'm seeing it a whole lot more places. Why did you create that brand, and how is it different than CR Property Group?
So,
if you don't mind answering that.
No, I think it's a good question. So 360 Property Management, any questions about what they do?
Nope.
Right? It's in the name.
Yeah.
Right.
Clear to Close Renovations. Any questions about what they do?
No.
Right? So CR Property Group, what does that mean? Like, so, but we've been around for so long, and there's some brand equity there, right? Like we've been around 15 years. And so when we made the decision probably 4 years ago, to focus and put a lot of time, energy, resources, and money behind direct to seller marketing and acquisitions, we needed to come up with a brand that, I mean, simply just told people what we were and what we did.
Right.
So that's how Integrity First Home Buyers was born. I mean, if I tell you Integrity First Home Buyers, they buy homes, and
they want to be, at least they're cognizant of the fact that they want to be an honest and a company that does business fairly, that they're at least going to put it in their name.
Yeah. So that was purely an effort to be clear with our messaging. When we opened CR Property Group back in 2004, we didn't, I mean, it certainly was not, it was an LLC, and we were going to buy a couple houses and flip a couple houses. We did not understand, the different, aspects of the business and who would you communicate with. And so Integrity First Home Buyers speaks to our seller clients. They understand who we are, what we do. And frankly, in the name and integrity, I think that's extremely important. It's one of our core values. So that was an important part of the name for us. And then just, telling people what you do in the name, I think is a simple, often overlooked part of naming your company. So that's our property groups. Basically, if you want to look at it as the parent company or the holding company that manages all of those different entities. So CR Property Group runs, manages, and is the funding arm of all those different entities.
That's excellent. Kind of like how Google got to a point that they had to create Alphabet, and now Alphabet owns all those different things. So yeah. I guess the other thing that I just want to point out here, and maybe you can speak to a little bit, Eric, is I think that a lot of people spend too much money too soon on their education. Not that they shouldn't spend money on their education, but I think people spend too much money too soon on their education. But I love that you're going to do 400 transactions this year or thereabout, and you're still spending money. You said consultant, but really on a coach and a mentor. You're spending money on coaching. You're spending money on your education, even though you are doing the crazy high volume that you're doing. Like, the learning never stops in real estate, does it?
It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'll give you something that when the learning, you can see earning and learning, I think, move parallel.
Oh, I'm writing that down.
The pace, yeah, you can.
That's like a Zig Ziglar. Earning and learning go hand in hand.
The pace at which you learn, I think, has a direct impact on the pace at which you earn. So you can learn. So I can tell you, I mean, the nature of our business today is completely different than it was 3 years ago, and it didn't happen by accident. We learned the turnkey business. We continue to learn how to improve it. And the same with the wholesale side of our business. The same thing, for 10 years, we did fix and flip, and that was it. That was the core of our business. For 10 years, we bought exclusively off the MLS. As you well know, I mean,
you could.
Yes. And then we could until we couldn't.
Right.
If we weren't willing to learn, a different way to acquire inventory, I'd be out of business or in a different business. I don't know what we would be doing, but so yeah, I mean, there's what works now won't work 6 months from now or 12 months from now. Whether that's hiring, whether that's the way that you lead manage your people or construction, or how you disposition a property. So yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, it's a little cliche-ish, but yeah, I mean, for me. And I'll speak, I'm glad that it's not the topic of conversation, because I'm just a little burned out about the whole COVID thing. But we had our biggest.
A little? You're only a little burned out about the whole.
I'm trying to be mild.
I appreciate that, buddy.
We had our most profitable month in the history of the company in April. So when in Pennsylvania, we all know that real estate was non-functioning. It was not essential. You couldn't show properties. But because we had pivoted our business to the turnkey model 18 months earlier, all of our buyers, for the most part, buy remotely anyway. So they did not need to see the property. They didn't need to schedule a showing. They didn't need a virtual tour. They wanted to see the renovation list, the home inspection, a pro forma, and make sure that the ROI matched up with what we had told them it was going to be. And then they bought it, funded it, and went to settlement. So we didn't specifically, plan for a pandemic. We just planned for a business model that we felt was better suited and was on the leading edge of what we wanted to do and aligned with our core values and our long-term goals. And it turned out that by doing that, when this came, it didn't impact us, negatively, as much as it did other people that were doing a more, conventional model of buying and selling. So that's an example of learning. I mean, you think about how many businesses will not recover from this last 90 days. I mean, it'll remain to be seen, but it's whatever the percentage is. If it's 1% and you're the one guy, then it's 100%, right? Like, so it doesn't matter if it's only 2%. If you're the guy that lost your business, it's 100% of your business. So that's, if anything, that should be a lesson for everybody about advancing, improving, becoming more efficient. I like to call it being nimble, like having the ability to make small tweaks and improvements to your business without, uprooting everything, which really just comes from learning and investing in the development of your people and your processes.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent information. So if anybody, I mean, Eric, you also do a show. You're also all over Facebook. But I just we try to, with this show, have an intentionality about also helping people get their first deal done and get started, or get like their second, third, and fourth deal done. I think that there's tons of content out there on how people can, scale their business and grow their business. But short of writing a check, I don't see a whole lot of people helping people get that first or second or third deal done. And I think that with your wholesaling operation, Eric, both buying and selling to other investors, because here's the deal, you don't, I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you've got a good chance of buying a good wholesale deal and not being taken advantage from Eric Brewer versus a lot of other wholesalers out there who maybe are just, because Eric wants to have an ongoing relationship with you. And I don't get paid anything by saying that. I just know that the more successful real estate investors there are in the market, the more business I'm going to do as a real estate investor and as an executive with a property management company. So I would just implore everybody, you can't go wrong at least looking to establish a relationship with Eric Brewer, either on a wholesale transaction, either end of the wholesale transaction, or as a guy who wants to buy, fix, and sell.
So Eric, how somebody get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you, whether they have a wholesale deal or whether they're looking to buy a turnkey deal from you or a wholesale property? How do they?
So we have, there's a couple different answers to that question. A lot of people may want to do a little homework before they make the decision that they want to buy something or, purchase a turnkey, or a lot of people don't, well, what do you mean by turnkey? What does that mean? So we have a few different websites. I think that we've specifically built to be informative for people, so they can gather information before they, connect with a salesperson, because everybody moves at a different pace.
Sure.
If you want to sell a property, you can go to ericbuysyourhouse.com. So anybody that might be watching this that has a property to sell, if you're an investor and you come across a deal and you're looking to wholesale it, or you have a portfolio of 3 to 30 rent. We just bought a portfolio of 13 rentals from what we call a tired landlord. Someone that was just kind of they're at the point where the cycle of their properties, they bought them, renovated them, 13, 14, 15 years ago. And
Sure.
now they're ready to be re-renovated. And that person just does not want to invest the capital to be able to re-renovate them and then start that cycle again. So they sold us I think it's a little over a dozen properties at one time. But you can go to ericbuysyourhouse.com. We also sell properties, to turnkey investors, to people that are looking to fix and flip, or, just acquire a property with some equity in it. And maybe they'll decide what their exit strategy will be after they get the deal. You can just go to paturnkeys.com. That's a ton of content on that website about what a turnkey is, what your expectations should be if you're going to buy a rental property. A lot of people use the terminology passive. I don't think passive and real estate should be used really in the same sentence, because even
Amen, brother.
it's just not right. Like at a minimum, you will need to make a few decisions 2 to 3 times a year about how to handle maybe a maintenance situation or a tenant situation or whatever. So it's close to being, the P word, but it's not. I don't even like to say it because it's just not. It's not passive. So those are the best ways. And then if someone wants to contact me directly, I mean, I get, surprisingly, to me at least, I have a lot of people that reach out to me after I might do a show or something like this, and people just want to talk. Maybe they're at a place in their business or their investment journey where they've gotten stuck or they need some advice. I take those phone calls. Actually enjoy it. It's one of the things that I seem to get the most gratification out of.
Amen, brother. Amen.
So my cell phone number is 717-818-3694. The best way to get a response from me quickly is to text me. And then we'll typically exchange a few text messages. And if it sounds like we should connect for a phone call, I'm happy to do that. So.
Yeah, you are lightning fast on your texts. I know your personal cell phone number, and that is your personal cell phone number. So it does not get much more authentic than that. And I got to tell you, Eric, half the reason I haven't monetized my investment group, half the reason I haven't monetized so many of the things that I do is because of what you just said. And people don't understand it, and therefore they it seems disingenuous to them. But I'm so glad you said it. Helping people is so rewarding. I just love, and then people call me like, we gotta have Anthony Moore on here because my boy Anthony Moore, I went and had lunch with him like a year ago, and he was stuck on 3 deals, and I told him how he should do these 2 deals, and since then has done about 10 or 15 deals.
Yeah.
That's so rewarding to me. The guy hasn't paid me a dime, and I don't want a dime from him. But like, it's just so awesome. I see what he's doing on Facebook, and I got him unstuck and I got him moving, and he'll be the first to tell you that. It's just it's so I'm really glad that you said that, Eric. We're gonna sign off now and say goodbye.
Cool.
But this was an absolutely awesome show, my friend. And thanks for being here. You delivered so much high level, great content on how to be a man of integrity, a businessman of integrity, and how you actually get more by doing less yourself personally and by getting rid of the ego. That's so great.
Yeah.
Stuff. All right. Awesome. All right, guys, we'll be back here tomorrow covering real estate news of the week. Join us again tomorrow at noon. Till then, you guys have a great day. Eric, thanks again.
See y'all.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, don't disappear, Eric, just because we signed